Hey guys, welcome back to Zane Customs. In this week's episode, we're going to be working on Marvel's Spider-Man. Alright, so for those of you who have seen any previous videos, you'll know that I usually start off a sculpt in Forger, which is an app for the iPad. And the more I've actually been sculpting on ZBrush, the less I use Forger. Like I do use it here, obviously, but I only use it for just to block out the basic body, just because it's quick and it's on the iPad, so I can kind of do it wherever I want. Because the iPad is portable, but I pretty quickly move into ZBrush on this sculpt. I feel like the more I'm using ZBrush and getting more comfortable with it, I'm relying way more on that and less on Forger. But on the Forger side of things, basically all I wanted to do was block out his basic muscular systems. I didn't want to go ahead and do his webs or anything. I did block out his eyes just to give me a rough sense, but I didn't want to go too far on it because I know I was going to put it into ZBrush and repose him. And here you'll see two sculpts I've done previously, a Venom and a Carnage. And I put a Carnage video out last week talking about the process of doing that sculpt and talked about how I wanted you to be able to purchase both separate sculpts and have them almost as a combined set and look like they're about to fight. But what I actually had planned was you could also buy the Spider-Man, and he's kind of in between them, like he's caught between these two mid-battle. And you don't have to buy all of them, or you can buy one if you want, but I just thought it'd be cool if you wanted a full set, you could buy all three of them and their bases kind of link up, and then you got Spider-Man caught in between these other two big baddies. So that's why I'm putting Spider-Man into this scene, so I can get a sense of scale, because I want him to be much smaller than the two symbiotes. But now here once I got him sized properly, I'm just repositioning him. I want him kind of hunched over, like he's looking like he's ready to battle. Now I've mentioned this a lot in the past, but ZBrush is great for a lot of things, especially reposing, but no matter how great your program is, a lot of times you're going to have weird geometry, weird mesh clipping and stuff after you're done reposing. So it looks really bad right now, but as I go through the process, I just try to tell myself, get to a position I'm happy with before I go in and have to here you can see I'm fixing the legs and stuff. But in the past, when I used to repose, I would reposition the arm and then go in and fix any problems, and then reposition the leg and go in and fix any problems. And that just never worked, because it would take forever, because I had to go in and fix any weird geometry right after I reposed it, and then it would end up being a bigger problem because I would end up reposing his arm again later. So that's one thing I've been working on, just trying to tell myself, reposition him completely until I'm happy with his pose, and then go in and fix any weird geometry. And after you do that, if something still looks wrong, then you can go in and reposition him again. But generally that works a lot better for me, and it doesn't take as long as it used to. So the hardest part and most time-consuming process in sculpting the Spider-Man was actually just the muscles in general. Doing it in Forger is pretty simple because everything's symmetrical, so it's just fast. But once I got him here and repositioned, it took quite a while of tweaking to get it so he looked anatomically correct and his muscles the right size and just things like that. But that's one thing I'm good at. I've been drawing my whole life, and I always like to draw superheroes, so I have a pretty good sense of how muscles should look. So that was actually pretty easy. I was worried mostly about doing the webs on this sculpt, and it ended up being probably one of the easiest parts. Time consuming, but probably one of the easiest parts. And for those of you that follow me on Instagram or follow this channel, you'll know that I did a Spider-Man sculpt in the past. And I say this in every video, but everything I sculpt you can buy from me off my Etsy account, which there's a link in the bio or in the description if you're interested. But I never posted that Spider-Man on Etsy because I was never happy with the sculpt. I posted him on Instagram and asked for people's feedback, and I got some good feedback, but even with that, I could just never get something I was happy with. And I'll post a picture up here in a minute of what that previous Spider-Man sculpt was, because that one was just him fighting Venom singularly. But Once it was decided that I was doing the Carnage, throwing the Spider-Man into this scene, I like this version of Spider-Man a lot more, and you'll see when I do the webs, I go over the process and why it turned out so much better this time rather than last time. But like I said, the majority of the time spent on this particular sculpt was just refining his body, his hands, his fingers, getting the anatomy and the position correct. And one thing I also did kind of struggle with on the Spider-Man was how far to take it as far as him having wrinkles, because, you know, he's obviously wearing a costume. He's not naked. This isn't just his skin. And I feel like in the end, you'll see it obviously looks like he's wearing a costume because he's painted blue and red and he's got webs and stuff, but I didn't go overly heavy with wrinkles all across his body and to make it look like it was a suit. But, you know, it's kind of personal preference. I looked up a lot of reference photos of professionals that have sculpted Spider-Man, and some of them will give him wrinkles around his joints, which I did. Some of them basically don't give him wrinkles at all. Some of them try to make it look more like some of the live action suits, which those wrinkle, but they don't wrinkle nearly as much as like real fabric would. His newer suits in like the MCU movies, I noticed they wrinkle more than the old ones, and I don't know if that's because the old ones are latex and the new ones are supposed to be more fabric. I don't know, so I just kind of decided to do my own thing and do what I thought looked good. And, you know, I like sculpting Spider-Man. You know, this is my second time. I'm sure it won't be the last, so maybe I'll try again and give him more wrinkles and try to sell the cloth more. But for this particular sculpt, I feel like what I did worked, and I'm happy with it. And also, since I mentioned the live action suits, I thought I'd bring that up, that when doing this one, I did look at all the suits from the films and even the video games and all those things, but I just wanted to do, in my mind, a classic Spider-Man. So he's just a basic blue and red. I didn't want to go too dark with the blue or the red. I wanted to be bright, you know, like just a classic Spider-Man, I would imagine. The one I think about, if ever I think of Spider-Man, this is the suit I think about. And the only difference between this Spider-Man and maybe like a comic version of him would be the spider emblem that I used, because I just pulled one off of Google, found one that I liked, and, you know, depending on the artist on a specific comic, the symbol's going to be different anyways, so, you know, there's always artistic interpretation. But yeah, that's just let you know my thought process on that. I was just trying to go for a classic Spider-Man. So normally I say that the hands are the hardest part of the process for me. In this case, that wasn't true, because I had all 5 fingers. There was no mess of geometry there, and I could have taken these 2 middle fingers and bent them down, but I figured it'd be easy enough just to basically erase them and sculpt 2 new fingers right on top of his palm. That ended up working really well. You can mask off everything, his whole body except for those 2 fingers, and then slowly bend him down, but you gotta kind of bend it joint by joint to make it look right, and that was just, it's time consuming, and this ended up working fine. And then with his other hand, I actually just ripped the fist that I sculpted off the previous Spider-Man and added that on here. And yeah, it's kind of cheating, you know, I can't do this with traditional sculpting. I can't just go in and copy paste, but that's one of the benefits of having ZBrush, having a digital program, and part of the reason I'm able to get a lot of these videos out faster, or I'm able to do them once a week, because I have a lot of shortcuts. And then there you saw I was working on doing some tests for his eyes or webs, and you'll see later I ended up having to go to Google and find some images of an eye I want and things, but I was just doing a few tests there. And now you can also see how I'm adding in some of the wrinkles in his fabric and trying to sell the fabric a little bit more, but not go too overboard with it. I don't want it to be so thick that you can't tell any muscle definition. I just want it to be light wrinkles going across. And then here I'm working on texturing. So all the red is going to have webs over it, so I didn't know if I wanted to texture any of his suit that's going to end up being red, because he's going to have the webs. And as far as painting it, you're not going to need all that extra detail. So I just masked off everything on his body that's going to end up being red, and I decided to just texture the blue because, again, the red's going to have its own texture kind of in the webs. And texturing's tough. I mean, I went through a lot of different alphas to get something I was happy with, and like I mentioned before, a lot of these textures look really good, but then once you go to print them out, they're actually so small in detail that they don't show up on the actual print. Like physically you can't see them, but they show up on ZBrush, and I don't know why that is, but that's a problem you run into a lot. And then here's the previous Spider-Man I sculpted. I wanted to throw these in to kind of show. I had two I was unsure of, one of them with webs and then one of them with kind of inset webs. And the reason I did the variant one with the inset webs is because the one I liked with the actual thick webs, the webs were all different thicknesses and sizes, because when I sculpted that, I had ZBrush Core, which is the cheap version, and on ZBrush Core, every time you zoom in, your brush doesn't stay the same size. It kind of scales relative to how far you are to the model. So I'd be sculpting a web and it would look fine, and then I'd zoom in to get a little closer, and then all of a sudden the web would be smaller because I got closer. And I just ran into a lot of issues there. But once I came into actual ZBrush, once I bought the full version and I started sculpting webs, I realized that this version doesn't do that. It scales the brush based off the model. No matter where you are, it's going to be the same size. So I was actually able to do the webs a lot easier, and I think it ends up looking really good. Also, just to mention something you saw just barely, I went into Sketchbook and was doing some work on the eye, the actual lens, and that's because I downloaded an image off the internet, but I needed it to be inversed. If you have an alpha, which is what your texturing is based off of, whatever is white is basically what will be affected. If it's black, nothing happens. If it's white, it'll be bumped up or inset or whatever tool you're using for it. So the photo I got off Google Images had a black Spider-Man lens, but I needed it to have a black background with a white lens, so I just took it into Sketchbook to inverse that, and then you can see it worked perfectly. I feel like the lens looks really good. And as far as the alpha I used for the webs, you can see on the left side, if you go down under, it's got the brush, and then it says dots, and then it says brush alpha. It's just a rectangle, because I didn't need any, like, I didn't want webs with like a bunch of detail inside the actual webbing itself. I just needed a solid line to do the webs, so I just got a rectangle alpha to follow along. And I know for some people it might be getting confusing when I start talking about alphas and remeshing or dynameshing and things like that, or topology, or just a lot of the lingo some people might not understand. And I like talking about it because I like explaining my process for these videos. But if there's things I talk about in these videos that you guys don't understand, you know, let me know in the comments, and if you're interested, I can do a whole video more talking about the actual lingo and what a lot of it means, and have more visual references for how a lot of these things work, because I've been referencing remeshing or dynameshing from the beginning, and I explain what that is, but without a good visual reference, people might not understand what that actually means. So if that's something you guys would be interested in, let me know. But to get back to the webs, you can see here how it is time consuming because I got to go across the whole body, but it's actually pretty easy. You know, you're just following the line, and ZBrush has something called lazy brush, where you drag your mouse or your pen or whatever you're using down, and then the brush stroke actually starts only being affected a couple seconds later, so it's like kind of following your brush, and it's easier to get good easy curves. And that's kind of confusing without a good reference, but it's basically just a tool that helps you get nice gradual curves easier without having any harsh or sharp lines. And then there you can see I was in Sketchbook again, and that was just me making more alphas for his webs, or his insignia on the front and back. And that's it. That's the whole sculpt. I hope you guys liked it. Again, you can buy all these they're going to be up on my Etsy account. You could either buy them individually, or if you're interested, I'm probably going to do a listing that has all 3 of these in one. And any video you've seen on this channel, I've posted that model up on Etsy to buy, except for, like I mentioned, the previous Spider-Man, just because I don't think I did a very good job with it. But anything else I sculpt, you can check out on my Etsy account. You can also check out my Instagram as well. Those are both at Zane Customs, and I'll have links down in the description if anyone's interested. And also, I'd want to mention again that in last week's video I said if I don't have a ton of subscribers or commenters, so if anybody wants me to sculpt anything specific, you could mention it in the comics or in the comments, and there's a good chance I'll do it. So same thing, you know, anything you guys want to see sculpt, it's not 100% guarantee I'll sculpt it, but you know, I'm really appreciative to anybody that's willing to watch these videos and comment and subscribe. So if you guys want specific things, I'm more than willing to try it out. So let me know anything you guys would like to see, you know, any specific characters or anything specific shows or anything really. Just let me know in the comments what you think and what you'd like to see me do next. And thank you for watching.